Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Wallenfels. I'm the communications manager here for the State Arts Commission. Really glad that you all could find time to join us, and also want to thank our colleagues at the Department of Revenue for helping us prepare this presentation and joining us on the call to help answer your questions on this meeting and later down the road. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the formal presentation. As I mentioned, this meeting's being recorded. We want to be able to share this out later to you, to your colleagues. This will be posted on our YouTube channel in the days ahead. During today's meeting, Zoom captions they are auto captions. They are available. You can turn them on by clicking the CC or Show Captions button on the bottom of your screen. As I mentioned, we'll ask that you stay muted unless invited to speak, so everyone can hear our presenters from our agency and from DOR clearly. If you have questions for our presenters, please wait for the Q&A portion that's going to follow the slide presentation. There is a special Q&A icon in your Zoom toolbar. Note that you may need to click the little 3 dots, more icon, in order to see that option. Note that we will not tolerate any profanity or disruptive behavior, and we'll remove you from the meeting if we see that occur. And if you run into any technical issues, feel free to shoot me a message directly, and I'll do my best to help you. I'm running a few different things here, and will do the best I can to resolve whatever's going on. So with that, I am going to hit record. And oh wait, no, we did start a recording. Karin, whenever you're ready, I would love for you to take the wheel.
Well, thank you, Michael, and hello, everybody. I know many of you here, but there are many of you, which is fabulous. But I'm Karin Hannon. I'm the Executive Director of the Washington State Arts Commission, also known as ArtsWA. So thank you all for joining us today. And we really are proud to partner with our colleagues at the Washington State Department of Revenue, a great group of colleagues led by Steve Ewing with a great team alongside him. We're also happy to have the involvement of Inspire Washington, the Washington Festivals and Events Association, and many others. And this combined support really made this session possible, as so many, I think, took our message and then helped spread the word further to get you all here today. And there are many of you here. Now, we know tax changes are not everyone's favorite topic. But this bill, SB 5814, introduces tax changes that we know could and very likely will impact your operations, especially for nonprofits in the arts and culture sector. So this is a significant shift in Washington's tax policy, extending sales tax to services that have been historically exempt. So without further ado, let's walk through the key changes together, and I will pause at the end of each slide to allow Steve and his team to weigh in should they find anything additional to say, something we might have missed or misstated. But there will be plenty of time at the end for your questions, and feel free to put those into chat, and we will answer as many as we can. And then we will take any questions that have not been answered. We will compile them, and then we will work with DOR to get those answered in a timely fashion. And this recording and this video will be available to you post-event. All right, so let's move on to the next slide, please, Michael. So what is SB 5814? What is it and what does it do? Well, it was passed by the Washington Legislature with the intent of modernizing the state's retail sales tax laws. And it took effect, it will take effect on October the 1st, which is right round the corner. So in short, the bill will expand retail sales tax to a really broad range of services, including high-tech and business-to-business services. It will repeal some prior tax exclusions, particularly for digital services. And it also is going to clarify the rules around transactions between affiliated entities. And there is an important reminder here that nonprofits are generally taxed like for-profits in Washington unless a specific exemption applies. So, which is why it's really important to understand how these new rules may and probably will affect you. So let me just stop there. Steve, anything to add?
No, I don't think so. Good so far.
Thank you. All right, so let's move on to the big change, which is particularly relevant for this particular group here around live presentations. So one of the biggest changes for our sector really is the new tax category, which is live presentations. And this is defined as any event where people interact in real time, that's either in person or online, to give, receive, and discuss information. And a fee or a charge for the activity is what makes it a taxable retail sale. So examples of this, and you can see some of them there on the screen, they include things like art classes, a pottery workshop, music, cooking, choir lessons, seminars, training programs, paid webinars or online courses with real-time Q&A. So if you, as an organization, charge a fee for these programs, they will be considered retail sales and they will be taxed accordingly starting October 1st, 2025. Anything to add there, Steve?
Maybe just that even if you do not charge a fee, but a presenter, like if you pay for someone to come in and present, that could also and attendance is not charged, but there is a fee to have someone come and present or lead the class or discussion. That could also make it a live presentation. So it's not just a ticket price for coming in the door, so to speak.
Thanks for the clarification, Steve. All right, so let's move on to what is not a live presentation. So this is the good news here, that performances are not considered live presentations for the most part. So that means your ticket sales for events like concerts and plays, musicals and operas, comedy shows, movies, sports events, they will not be subject to the new live presentation sales tax. And the key takeaway is that performance ticket sales are safe from the new tax, which we know is a big relief for many of the arts groups that are likely on this call right now. Steve, anything there?
No, I see some questions coming in. One thing I'll note that I don't think was in the slides is one-on-one lessons are interpreted as not being subject to the tax or not interpreted as a live presentation. So if it's an individual music lesson or dance lesson, that does not fit the definition of live presentation and would not be subject to sales tax.
Thanks for the clarification. All right, so let's move on to slide 5, and this is new taxes on services that you purchase. So beyond live presentations, the bill makes several services that you buy newly taxable, and this obviously will be an important consideration for your budget. So here are a few of those important ones. The information technology and IT services item. So this includes things like network support, help desk services, data processing, and technical training. And then custom website development. So this will cover building or redesigning your website from scratch. And then security and monitoring services. So this would apply to things like hiring event security or alarm monitoring services for your facility. And so these costs will now come, or they may now come, with retail sales tax, which could obviously impact your budget planning. So it's going to be really important to review your contracts and prepare for these changes as you get ready for your next for the next year or so and going forward. Steve.
Good so far.
All right, let's move on to advertising services, which also are now taxable. So this is another major update, and advertising services will be taxable starting October 1st, 2025, like everything else. And this really is a pretty significant change, as Washington will now be one of the few states to tax advertising. And this includes services related to, again, what you see on your screen here, creating and placing ads, whether they are digital or print, graphic design, layout, art direction, online marketing, lead generation, and search engine optimization. But what is not included would be web hosting or domain name registration, advertising in newspapers, TV, radio, or billboards. And this is a key distinction which in the law, and this could be subject to future legal challenges, apparently. Direct mail is taxable, even though we know it's a form of physical advertising. So, bottom line is if you provide these services or you subcontract them, then you may need a reseller permit, this is a free permit, but it allows you to buy services for resale without paying sales tax, but then you must collect it from your customers. And Steve, could I ask you to maybe clarify that a little bit?
Sure, and I'll also look to my team to chime in if one of them wants to raise their hand or just come off mute. But yes, just like you can resell goods as a a retail store, you can buy something wholesale, you can buy clothes wholesale and then resell them for resale. And when you buy them wholesale, you're not paying sales tax on them at that time. The customer pays sales tax when you resell them. Similarly, with services, you can buy them and resell them. So you may, let's say, be part of you may do videography, and you, as part of your service to your client, maybe you hire someone to do graphic design or animation that will appear on the screen. And that is part of the service that you provide to your client. Then you are buying those services and reselling them to your customer. And so you would not be paying sales tax on the graphic designer, your customer would be. So I know that's a little bit convoluted, but that's kind of the gist of it. We can talk about that more later if folks want, but I don't know if any of my colleagues would have anything more to add on that.
Yeah, Steve, that's great. No, I think you hit all the high points. The only thing I would add, I'm Tim Jenrich. I'm from the Department of Revenue, Senior Assistant Director. The only thing I would say, these are new impositions to us, and how the resale works in this context is a little less clear. We're learning a little bit here. And one of the things that can impact this is whether the purchaser that mean yourself are making use of whatever you plan to resell. If you do make intervening use of it, then suddenly it becomes taxable. What I would suggest is if you think you've got purchases for resale, as you're getting that reseller permit, work with our folks to find out a little bit about whether, just to make sure your purchase is for resale, because on the backside there are some significant penalties. So it's always good to talk with us, figure out, work through your specific set of facts, so you've got something you can work for and feel comfortable with. So that's the only thing I would add.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Steve. And, this is a good point at which to say that the folks at DOI are really available to you individually to work with you afterwards when you have your many questions. We will try and get to as many questions as possible during this session, but they are available to you, so please take advantage of that. So let's move on to the temporary staffing services, which we know is also going to affect many of you because these temporary staffing services are now also newly taxable. So what does it mean? It means if your organization hires temporary workers through a staffing agency, for example, maybe event support staff, maybe ushers, you'll now pay retail sales tax on those contracts. Now, to qualify as temporary staffing, the staffing firm must do the following: hire and assign workers to you temporarily, let you supervise them directly, and attempt to reassign the worker after the contract ends. So what is not included? Direct hires. So this tax does not apply to employees you hire directly. Also independent contractors. The tax doesn't apply to work done by independent contractors. And then outsourced service providers. And this really is a key distinction. So for example, hiring a full event management company to run an event is not a taxable staffing service, as they are managing the work, not just providing you with temporary staff that you then manage. Steve, Tim, or any of the team, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I again, if my colleagues want to chime in, but I think one bit of nuance there is with something like the independent contractors is if, let's say, you hire a security contractor to provide security at your event, that is not temporary staffing, but it might fall under the security services tax component of this law. So just a note to be careful to double check if something does not fall under one of the services in 5814, make sure it does not also fall under one of the other services in 5814.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so let's move on to resale MPUs, which is multiple points of use, and affiliated groups. So let's touch on a few technical points that we know could apply to some of you. So resale. So if your nonprofit resells advertising or staffing services, you may use a reseller permit, but only if you don't use the service yourself before reselling it. So, for example, if you buy an ad from a vendor and then you resell that ad space to a sponsor, you can use a reseller permit. And then moving on to the multiple points of use exemption. If a taxable digital service is used concurrently both inside and outside Washington, you may be able to allocate its use and then reduce your tax. So you would have to have detailed records to prove this. And then last but not least, sales between affiliates. There are different rules for services sold between related organizations. Advertising services sold between affiliates are generally excluded from sales tax. However, temporary staffing services are not excluded and will be taxed even when sold between related organizations. Now, that's quite a mouthful there, Steve. Anything to add on that one?
No, I think that was a good overview.
Okay, great. And so save your questions up, put them in the chat. I know there are many of them going into chat now. All right, so let's move on to B&O deductions and digital services. All right, so if your organization qualifies as an artistic and cultural organization, which is probably going to be most of you, you might be eligible for a business and occupation, better known as B&O, tax deduction. And this deduction could be especially helpful if you offer taxable classes or workshops. So to qualify, your organization must be a nonprofit, managed by a governing board of at least 8 individuals who are not paid employees, and be organized exclusively for the purpose of providing artistic or cultural exhibitions or educational programs. And also, SB 5814 repeals prior exclusions for some digital automated services, also they're known as DAS. So if you offer or use online educational content, archives, subscription services, those might now be taxable. So this area is really complex, we know that, and we recommend you check with a tax advisor to determine whether these rules affect your offerings. Steve?
No.
Okay. All right, let's move on to what is next and what should you do now? So here's your action list. So mark your calendar. Changes take effect on October 1st, 2025. We suggest you talk to a professional tax person or bookkeeper, especially important for understanding those nuances which we just talked about around digital automated services, multiple points of use, and all these complex contract scenarios. We also suggest you review existing contracts. So contracts for services in SB 5814 signed before October 1st might be grandfathered in and avoid the new tax for the period of October 1 till March 31st, 2026. But if you materially alter or renew during the grace period, they will become taxable. And then all contracts will be subject to retail sales tax beginning April 1st of 2026. And then last but not least, I guess you have to plan for increased service costs. So be ready for potential price increases for web, IT, advertising, staffing services. But, don't panic in one area. Performance revenue is safe. The biggest changes, as we can see, are around classes, services you buy, some digital content, and Remember, you're not alone in this. At ArtsWA, I know with Department of Revenue and other colleagues, Inspire Washington, our festivals and events groups, Arts Northwest, all of those groups are here and helping and will work with us and with other partners to help. So last but not least, let's move on to a few resources before we introduce
Here,
our panel.
Karen, can I just open? So I have a lot of questions on the grandfathering existing contracts. Just so people's edification, there is an interim guidance statement that can lead you through what that means. But if you have a contract that you entered into with somebody, they've paid the amount before October 1st, we deem the sale essentially to have taken place before October 1st. No sales tax is due. And then for other existing contracts, which Karen was alluding to, where you have had those contracts signed, entered into, but payment was not made before October 1st and services occur after October 1st, we are allowing or accepting reporting by sellers that's consistent with their reporting before
Now,
October
Steve froze
1st.
on my screen. Michael, is it me or is it Tim?
It's you, Karin. I can hear Steve just fine.
Or Tim, in this case.
Or is that you, Tim? Sorry. I'm tracking the chat. Go ahead, Tim. We've got you.
So like I said, if you have an existing contract that's signed but not paid and the services are after October 1st, we will accept your prior reporting. So you, in other words, would not need to collect sales tax or report retailing B&O until April 1st. So you'd essentially have a grace period in order to get your contracts updated. I don't know whether you all have really long-term contracts, but this would cover a lot of the shorter-term contracts that occur probably where you've either pre-sold tickets, which I saw here, or you have an event coming up shortly after the October 1st date, but before the end of the grace period. So just wanted to add that on. Thank you for giving me the chance.
Thank you, Tim. Karin, are you back? Let's see here. While we're waiting for Karin, I think we're here at the end. As you can see, there's a link here to DOR's resources about this bill. And yes, I'll drop this link into chat after I stop sharing the screen here in a moment. And the QR code that you see on screen will also take you to that same URL. And you can see a list of the DOR, our colleagues at DOR that are great to reach out to about this bill. And Karin, unless there's any other business, I think we can start looking into the questions that have been dropped into the Q&A tool and into chat. So I'm going to start with the questions that have been put into our Q&A tool. So first, Melissa asks, sales tax on parade entries or vendor booths for a parade or festival. Tim or Steve or anyone from DOR?
Michael, you're muted.
Can I be heard now?
Heard you before.
Heard me before. Okay. Thank you, Steve. So the question again was, will there be sales tax on parade entries or vendor booths for a parade or festival?
So I can probably take this one. And what I would say is that is a really great question, one that I think we'd want to get back to you. I think that would depend somewhat on the facts and circumstances. I probably can't give you a one size fits all without knowing what the content of those events are and what the ticket is purchasing. So we'll get back to you on that one. Sorry, we couldn't provide a clear answer at the moment. Unless someone else from my department wants to chime in.
I would say my gut feel on vendor booths would be that the charge to a vendor for placing a booth at the festival would not be a live presentation. That's a license to use real property, charges to attend a parade. That's again, probably going to be a performance. I don't remember what the rest of the question was, sorry.
So it's whether there would be a sales tax on parade entries or vendor booths for a parade or festival.
Yeah, it's unlikely, but it would be helpful to have more information.
Great, thank you. Next, an anonymous question. Are rehearsals for a youth orchestra considered to be live presentations?
Do you charge for the rehearsals?
Is the
And are you
is
charging the musicians to attend the rehearsal, or is this for the public to attend the rehearsal?
the person who posed this question on the call and can clarify?
Yes, it's for tuition for the students to participate.
No. I mean, it's again, it's boy, I don't know. Is this offered by a school? Sorry.
No, it's a nonprofit organization. It's not a school.
But this is all tied to a performance.
Correct.
It's not just music classes or music lessons.
No, it's preparation for a concert.
I would be really curious to have more information on that.
And we can help collect that. Milt, I know I've been corresponding with you, so we'll get more information from you to relate to DOR.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet. So the next question is from Jill, who asks, Performing Arts Center here. So if we have a couple examples here, National Geographic or David Sedaris come in, we charge tickets, and they do a Q&A. That is now a taxable live presentation, question mark. And then there's a second question. What about when we have a school matinee and they do a Q&A?
So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and Tim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the school matinee is going to be considered a performance even if they tack on a Q&A at the end of it. I don't think we would change it just because you added a Q&A or the artist decided to take a few questions about their work.
And I think Darlene's right. The reason that we've taken, and this was a question I think that came up within the chat. The reason why performances are out is because they're not similar enough to the items that were mentioned in that list of live events, things like courses, seminars. And so I think Darlene is correct on that.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Claire, who asks,
How are you? I'm good.
Oh, hold on. Ray, I'm going to mute you there. Thank you, Ray. So Claire asks, ticketed events for performers are exempt. What about payment to the performers at said events?
I think maybe it might be helpful for us to clarify more how we're distinguishing between performances and types of things that the law says are live presentations. So the law specifically talks about, and I'm going to pull up the language here, but someone else can chime in if they know it more readily, but classes, seminars, and those types of, the law specifically calls out those types of events, which we took to mean the legislature did not intend for performances to be subject to the tax. So I was seeing some questions in the comments about how we're distinguishing between performances and presentations. And so again, it goes back to the language that the legislature used. And then I would encourage folks to look at our live presentation guidance that we have on that landing page, which explains it more. But does anyone from DOR want to say any more about that?
Yeah, it included seminars, lectures, workshops, courses, or any similar event. And so when you look at the kind of the nature of the things before similar events, they all, have an educational or instructional component to it. And I have seen a few questions in the chat as well about tuition and education. And we also have an interim guidance statement related to schools and educational institutions that might be of interest to some of you. I don't know if any of you are accredited institutions or approved by the Board of Education, but that might be something else you want to look at.
And to get back to the original question, I think one of it was the ticket sales. Yes, they're not subject to retail sales tax. Are the employees that come in, and if I'm understanding the facts, that work as part of the folks who perform, are they also subject to tax on the amount that they're paid for their services? The answer on that is no, unless they were for some reason a temporary staffing company, which I doubt is the case in these situations. I don't know, Darlene, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so. I think if it's a performance, then neither the tickets or the performance are going to be considered a live presentation, or the performer or the ticket sales. Neither one is going to be a retail sale.
Thank you. I'd like to quickly acknowledge that we have over 50 questions in the Q&A and at least as many in the chat. Well, we won't be able to get through all of those during today's call, which ends at 1:30, but we will be collecting all of these questions and working with the team at DOR to get everything answered and produce an FAQ that can be referenced in the future. So just please note if we don't get to your question during this call, which in all likelihood, because of the number of questions, we won't, that doesn't mean this question won't get answered. So Megan asks, I need to know if video production services need sales tax collected or if the end product is licensed / not work for hire, whether that is still an exception. Thank you.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, as written, it says, I need to know if video production services need sales tax collected or if the end product is licensed / not work for hire, whether that is still an exception.
So just to clarify, we're talking about somebody who is just hired to create a video of the production. So they create an edited master copy video of a production for their client. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Megan, if you're on the call, can you confirm?
I am. I'd like to chime in. Yes, thank you for this opportunity. So it wouldn't necessarily be related to the live performance part of this. This is more the human services, digital goods space, right? So we're brought in, we're creating a piece for a third-party client that is then, we would retain the copyright, but they have use of the item, the deliverable good. So it's already been kind of a confusing space for tax law, but typically that's been B&O oriented. But now we have this kind of interesting new interpretation. Often it interacts with advertising, right? Because a video asset might then be used to create an ad. So we have a few layers, but copyright has always been this extra piece of question. Like if you're not giving the rights, the full rights to the piece, and we've retained it, but licensed it, it would not be retail sales applicable.
Yeah, it sounds like you could be talking about a royalties kind of a situation where you're just licensing the right to use your intangible. And royalty income is not generally subject to sales tax, but this is another situation where it'd probably be good to put the facts down in writing for us.
Yeah, it's tough because this is like in design services, it's very similar to design, that's being taxed. Photography typically, again, wouldn't be taxed. You're selling a license, you're retaining the copyright. So video is in this kind of in-between space. Who can I reach out to further suss this out?
So I would suggest you can request a ruling.
Will you drop a link to how I would pursue that?
Yep, I can do that.
Yeah, and we drop that. It's in the presentation, which we'll share out, and in the chat, that's the rulings at email address.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. The next question is from Julie. What about hiring a photographer for Instagram?
So generally, if you're hired to take pictures and provide them to your clients, whether it's in print or digital format, that's already considered a retail sale. So that's not something that's new.
Thank you. Next, an anonymous question. Is a digital ad with the newspaper's website subject to retail tax?
So I think the question is whether the exclusion here applies. There is an exclusion for certain types of advertising from newspapers. I think we would need more information to know whether this could be a qualifying transaction, but that would be the issue. In that case, is that going to be is the underlying transaction going to qualify for the exclusion? Darlene, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's about right.
Thank you. The next question is from Sarah, who asks, what if you purchase any of these services from out of state? Would you then owe use tax on them?
So I think that's a great question. For the most part, I don't think for the most part, for all of the individual services that have been enumerated, there's not a use tax component currently. But the only thing I would caution is depending on how the transaction occurs, it could be use tax or it could be deferred sales tax that could be due. And there could be a deferred sales tax liability. It's sort of just, it depends on the factual scenario, but the simple answer to your question is no, there's not a use tax component. Darlene, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, the only thing that I would add to that is that there are lots of out-of-state businesses that have nexus in Washington and are required to collect sales tax. So just because they're an out-of-state company doesn't mean that they aren't going to charge you sales tax.
Thank you both. Next question comes from Aaron, who asks, is there a threshold amount one has to make in order to be subject to this? This I'm assuming meaning broadly these new taxes in ESSB 5814.
So I'm going to say that the answer to that is no, there's no minimum threshold for collecting sales tax. If you make retail sales, then you are required to collect sales tax. However, there is a threshold for B&O tax. There's a small business B&O tax credit. So even if you have to collect and remit sales tax, you may not have to pay B&O tax.
Thank you, Darlene. Next question comes from Ruth Ann, who asks, please address situation like gifts with a donation, similar to the way public TV and radio offer various gifts based on contribution level.
So that's a great question. It's an interesting situation. If they have to give a donation to receive the gift, then generally the amount of the gift, the value of the gift is considered a sale. However, if it's something where, they get the gift no matter what the level of donation is, it could be that the person giving the donation is just considered the consumer of the tangible personal property that they're giving away. So kind of depends a little bit on how it's structured.
Thank you. Next question comes from Louise, who says, we are a nonprofit dance school. Our dance classes are for school-age kids with up to 27 kids per class. Is the tuition they pay taxable?
So generally, dance classes are going to fall into the physical fitness activities classification, which are so we have an industry guide on our website for recreational and fitness activities. Generally, if it's detailed in that guide, it's not going to be considered a live presentation because it's in the physical fitness realm.
And Darlene, what that means then what? Sales tax or not sales tax?
Well, that's a great question, Steve. And for some physical fitness activities, they are only retail sales if they occur at an athletic or fitness facility. And for some, they are retail sales no matter where they occur. So I would have to advise that people should take a look at that guide if they have questions about physical fitness activities. It's another area that can be a little bit tricky. No one size fits all, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Darlene and Steve. An anonymous question here that has a couple of scenarios as examples. The question is, if a live presentation event is sold through a ticketing platform such as eTix or Eventbrite, who is responsible for remitting the tax? And the two scenarios they have here, scenario one, my organization processes transactions directly through our own credit card processor hosted on Eventbrite. And scenario two, Eventbrite collects the transactions with their processor and then pays out my organization after the event.
So that's another tricky one because it kind of depends on whether the platform is considered a marketplace facilitator. If they are considered a marketplace facilitator, they should be collecting the sales tax and remitting it for you. So you're going to have to probably look at the terms of your contract to find out whether the platform collects sales tax or not.
Thank you, Darlene. Another anonymous question. Steve or Tim, I saw you come off mute. Are there things to add?
No,
Can I
Darlene.
maybe? Well, I know there's been questions about conferences and also about tickets to fundraising events, which I suspect is something that a lot of folks on this webinar do. And so maybe we could just address that really quickly. And again, my colleagues, feel free to chime in because I'm by no means the most expert person here. But conferences, again, if it meets the definition of the types of events that are live presentations, and there is some kind of consideration, either people paying a price to get in or payment to a speaker or a presenter, then a conference, whether in person or remote, may be a live presentation. Whereas I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but for a fundraising event, there is an exception for fundraising events. Am I correct about that, DOR colleagues?
I believe that is correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. I saw some people were very excited to see that question get answered. An anonymous question. If a company were to hire temp staffing, but there was a manager on property to manage that temp staffing in addition to our internal management, would this still apply as being taxable?
So again, to some degree, it's going to be factually determined. It's hard to tell from those facts what the situation is. But if you're bringing a temporary employee, so you've got another business out there that's in the business essentially of supplying or supplementing workforces. So you go to them, you pay a certain amount of money. That person comes for a short duration to supplement the workforce and then is gone. And that other company, that staffing business, is really the employer of that individual who's performing this temporary staffing. Then it's going to be subject to retail sales tax. It's not clear in this manager position whether they are an employee of the temporary staffing company that's coming in for a short amount of time or doing something else. But that's kind of the analysis I think you'd go through in thinking through that question. Are you really purchasing something for what would otherwise be a staffing company? Are you purchasing that staffing workforce? So Darlene, I give you an opportunity if there's anything I missed.
No, I think that's accurate because like we've had a few questions about event production companies where you hire somebody to come in and manage your event. So they are really a subcontractor. They are managing your event, and that's what they do. So even if there's a line item for labor, those people are working under the direction of the event management company. You're not hiring temporary staffing because even though it's on a temporary basis, that's not a staffing company. They're not just providing employees at your direction. They are managing your event for you. So there are a lot of different transactions going on out there and a lot of different ways to do things. And we understand this is challenging for all of us.
Darlene. Our next question comes from Matt, who asks, we often have speakers come and read from their own works or a prepared speech with a Q&A that follows. Are these considered taxable?
So if I'm understanding correctly, I think you're just talking about, let's say somebody wrote a book and they're coming and they're reading you an excerpt from their book and then maybe taking some questions about their creative process or about their book. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's one of the kind of things that happens, but we also, like, we have someone who wrote a book who's coming in to do, I guess, there's going to be a moderator, they're going to talk about stuff, and then there's also going to be questions from the audience.
That's a really interesting scenario. And Tim, I'm going to let you jump in here, but I kind of lean towards that being more for entertainment or performance purposes than being really a seminar, lecture, course, or workshop.
Yeah, that's sort of a new one for me. I don't really have an answer. That's one I'd suggest maybe writing in. We can get some additional information out on that one.
Thank you, Matt and Darlene and Tim. Our next question comes from Hannah, who asks, what does related organizations mean regarding selling advertising or staffing between them?
Oh, I think you're referring to the affiliated entities.
Is that right, Hannah? Hannah, are you still with us? Darlene, let's assume that it does for the purposes of the question.
I'm not Hannah, but I had the same question. So I could tell you that it was under the additional notes where it said advertising not taxed if sold between related organizations.
Thank you, Kelly. Darlene, does that give you the clarity you're looking for? I think we are probably talking about affiliated entities.
I do think that we're talking about the affiliated entities, and affiliated entities is defined by statute, but the quick and dirty answer to what affiliated entities means, it means that they're under common control.
Under common control. Okay. Kelly,
under common control.
Yeah. Kelly, does that give you the answer that you need?
I think so. I think what I'm hearing is the advertising's not taxed if you're selling between organizations that are maybe owned by the same holding company or something.
That would be a good example.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Darlene. Next comes from Gabriella, who says, just to put a fine point on it, is the tax on live presentations applicable to all service providers, meaning organizations and freelance individuals, say teaching artists who offer classes and workshops on their own?
Yes, I think that's fair to say. It can apply to freelance or business or entities.
Thank you, Darlene. Next from Maddie, who asks, what if tickets have been sold for events in November and December prior to this tax being in effect? Will those tickets be taxed?
So I think the answer is no. I mean, it's always the facts, but if they were sold and the persons who are attending have already paid, then absolutely. So contract has been entered into, the amounts have been paid in the pre-sold tickets. If it's happened already, at that point, we would consider the sale deemed to have occurred before October 1st. No sales tax would apply. If payment, for instance, on these pre-sold tickets for some reason were to happen after October 1st, but the contracts essentially were entered into and signed before October 1st, then there would be that grace period. And we would not require a change in reporting. And that grace period goes all the way to March periods ending March 31st, 2026.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Next, we have a question about Santa. It says from Tim, does Santa need to tax groups that hire him? So I'm assuming this is a scenario where someone is hiring Santa to come to an event and be Santa. Tim, do I have that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So I'll go out on a limb here and Darlene reel me in, but I don't think and I think the idea here is, I think the question's around live presentations. If I've got that wrong, let me know. But I don't think that in this case, what that person is being asked to do is similar to the list of things that are there, the workshops, the seminars. Yes, there's some interaction, but I don't think it fits within the language of the imposition. That would be my initial guess. We can put something into the FAQs a little more definitive going later. But Darlene, would you agree with me on that one?
I would agree with you on that. I would put that into the performance category.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, like last year, I was Santa for A and so just did want to make sure I didn't have to give them or charge them sales tax for me to be there again this year.
Now, if you had a seminar on how to be Santa, that might be another thing. So
you'll need more beard, Tim.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Thank you very much.
Workshop. Yes, you bet. Thank you, Tim. An anonymous question that just asks simply, how much is this tax?
Okay, so I assume that they're asking about the sales tax, but I'm going to address this in two parts anyway. So sales tax in Washington, we have over 300 location codes. So sales tax can vary from, I want to say the lowest is like 7.7% and the highest might be up to 10.5. So the sales tax rate varies. It's comprised of 6.5% state rate and then a local component. The B&O tax, on the other hand, is right now 0.00471. So it's actually lower than the service and other activities rate, which was what previously applied to most of these activities. So you will pay less B&O tax, but you will have to collect sales tax and remit it.
And can we just, apologies, I was looking through the chat. So if you already said this, Darlene, I apologize if I'm repeating, but we have a tool on our website as well as an app that you can download on your phone to help you determine what sales tax, if you are charging and collecting sales tax, we have a tool on our website and an app you can download to figure out what the correct sales tax rate is that you should apply to the charge. So that service is available on our website.
And I'll add one thing, because we haven't talked a lot about this, is a concept called sourcing. So when you're making a sale for retail sales tax purposes, you have to know where the service or good are being received. And for services, that means where first use happens. So each of the IGSs kind of give you examples of how you do that. Live presentations, for instance, if you are having a live event where everyone is going to be in the same place, that event location is going to determine the tax rate that's applied. Fairly simple. But if you have people that are attending remotely or in a hybrid fashion, you may need to figure out either where those individuals are viewing or using those services, or if you don't have that, then a billing address that might be in your books and record that you obtain at the time of payment, or business address. But that's just a nuance to be cognizant of, because in some instances you'll be able to source all your event sales to one location. If you've got online events, you may need to source the sale to multiple locations. Darlene, Steve, anything that I'm missing on that?
I don't think so. Oh, we do also, the department is also offering webinars on how to collect and remit sales tax.
And those can be found on a link to those can be found on the 5814 landing page that we have, as well as some pre-recorded videos explaining the basics of sales tax.
Great. We will include links to those in our follow-up to the registrants of this call. Thank you, everybody. I do want to acknowledge that we're almost at time. We have about 3 minutes left. We'll probably get through a few more questions. As I said, we at the Arts Commission will work with DOR to get all these questions answered and compile an FAQ and share it out with the public, not only the registrants of this call, but just in public generally on our website. So our last few questions here. First from Diane asking about digital ads, says, how does it work with digital ads we run on behalf of our clients that run in all 50 states and multiple countries? Some of our clients are in Idaho, some are in Washington. We have offices in both Washington and Idaho. How do we determine what needs to be taxed?
So that's a really good question. I would suggest folks look at our interim guidance on advertising, but in general, when you're looking at the sourcing of advertising, it's where first use happens, or in other words, where the result of the service occurs with advertising, at least disseminated advertising, not necessarily the creative side. It's where the viewer views it, which seems like it's very difficult to figure out. If the seller knows that location, the person who's selling the advertising, they should be collecting tax based on those viewer location. You can think of directional advertising. I am going to direct advertisements to 1 or 2 locations in Washington that have got a zip code attached, and then the rest of them are going to be addressed outside the state. In that case, the seller is going to very well able to figure out what the retail sales tax that may be due and collect it. In a lot of situations, and I'm not sure that the one that you're positing is one of those, but it sounds like it could be, where neither the purchaser nor seller know at the time the ads are placed where that viewership is going to happen. And so in those cases, what typically will happen is there can be a default to the purchaser's address that would be determined by the seller if that address is in Washington. Potentially all of that advertising spend could be subject to retail sales tax, but I will note for those of you that are purchasers of advertising, you have the option of submitting what's called a multiple points of use certificate that was really very briefly discussed in this presentation. And what it allows you to do as the purchaser is provide that to the seller up front. They will not collect sales tax, that would be exempt. And then it is the responsibility of the purchaser to figure out what portion of that advertising is within the state and is outside the state. And if after exercising due diligence you can't figure that out, then you can use a proxy. One of the things that we put into our interim guidance is internet statistics as a way to make it easier so we don't necessarily tax everything, even your out of state advertising, but get to a number that's realistic for what's in Washington. And I didn't know in that question a lot of facts, so I made a lot of assumptions and gave you different options. I would say look at the examples, and if you have questions, feel free to contact us and we can provide you more. This is a fairly unique imposition. Not a lot of states do advertising, so we are learning and trying to incorporate that into making sort of administrable rules for people to source their sales. So that was a lot of information. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. We're here to share information. So let's do one last question. Then I'm going to pass it to Karin and DOR to close things out for the day. This last question comes from Matt, who asks, when do we start collecting on presentations? Would this be on all tickets sold to a presentation on or after October 1st, 2025, or just on tickets sold for presentations that have been contracted on or after October 1st?
So definitely any new contract that is entered into beginning October 1st or thereafter, sales tax should be collected to the extent that those are live presentations. If you have an existing contract, you will have a grace period. And again, look at the IGS to figure out what an existing contract is through March 31st. The one caveat I would say is if there is a change, material change to one of the terms of your existing contract, then you will need to start collecting retail sales tax. But I'm assuming in most of the situations, and I could be assuming incorrectly here, at least for live presentations, there won't be a lot of material changes in the contracts. So you'll probably be able to benefit from the grace period for those contracts that are entered into, so signed before October 1st. And Darlene or Steve, feel free to chime in if you want to add anything.
I don't think I have anything to add to that, Tim.
Well, thank you. This is the end of what we'll do for Q&A at today's meeting. But like I said, we will be following up and working with DOR to keep giving you resources. DOR has a lot of fantastic resources on their website. They've shared links. We'll share links and follow-up messaging around this. But now I'll pass it off to Karin to just close things out for the afternoon.
Yeah, just very briefly, thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We know this how complex this is and how worried and concerned so many of you are. I hope this has been helpful, and we will, of course, follow up and be tracking this and partnering really closely with DOR and other folks here. But thanks to Tim, Jenrick, Steve Ewing, Kate Armstrong, Chelsea Brannigan, Darlene Warner, who chimed in a lot, which was fabulous, and Birgit Miller. And we'll look forward to, just staying your partner in this as we navigate this together. DOR, any final words?
I would just say thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. We know this is hard, and was a very short runway between enactment and implementation, but we really are trying to work with folks to get information out, to have learned from interested parties along the way to create guidance that hopefully is, well, not necessarily, what at the end of the day you'd want to have paying sales tax, but hopefully providing enough guidance to make administration possible as we move forward. So just thank you to everyone here for having us and meeting with us, and always reach out if you have questions. We're here to support you.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.